This is Channel 13.
Living side by side, dreaming two by two. You are the reason that we do what we do for you. Yeah, for you. We do it for you on WIBW.
Welcome into our WIBW Digital News Center on this another Throwback Thursday as we take you into our WIBW Video Vault, proudly presented by Ace Plumbing, Heating and Air, and Appliance. We are heading back 35 years ago in our Video Vault today.
And we're heading, I guess, way back, way up and back.
Something like that.
Little,
Yes.
Little airplane, I guess.
Yeah. Little history lesson. This is something that you've actually been looking for in the vault, Doug, as you've been taking a look at various stories that we might share with you. You have talked about this quite a bit. So going back in time, I was a senior in high school, so I'm not going to make your jokes about my age. So the year that these stories are from is 1990. So in that 1990 to 1991 time frame, if you remember back then what was happening worldwide, tensions in the Middle East and the Persian Gulf War. And you may not realize that the 190th Air Refueling Wing had a very important role in that conflict.
Very early on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, we knew we had resources and assets, I believe they called them, to get over there. But to get everything over there, you're going to need the refuelers to help get everything moved to that point. So the 190th, I think, played one of the earliest roles in the operation because, you know, they were vital.
It's largely believed the 190th was among the first Air National Guard units that was deployed to the Gulf War region. They arrived in Saudi Arabia in August of 1990. So a lot of us I was remembering that it was that 1991, that second semester senior year, when really everything came to a head in the conflict.
Terms like Scud missiles and Patriot missiles, those were the words that you know, everybody was talking about.
And it was Operation Desert Shield. They operated from that air base there, King Abdul Aziz Air Base, with tankers launching for the region as early as August 10th of 1990 is what I was taking a look back and looking at some of that today. And then they were there through Operation Desert Storm, not arriving home until March of 1991. But that's for another episode of the Video Vault.
We're getting close to that anniversary, you know, it's January now, so looking ahead a few months, we will, because we went all out on that. I'm not going to tell you too much, but we had live coverage when they came back. It was a huge celebration. Show you more of that later.
Aligning this, though, the deployment of the 190th Air Refueling Wing to Saudi Arabia with our history as a station, our general manager at the time was Jerry Hawley. I can't remember exactly how long Jerry Hawley was our general manager here.
Long time.
But he had an interest in the military and Forbes Field and our Air Force, Air National Guard. The air base would have been active at one point, too, I believe, when he would have been working here. And that always was of interest to him. And so he actually traveled to Korea. He traveled to Japan. And then in October of 1990, he traveled to Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, and he took Bob T-Bolt with him. Bob did everything for us. One of my, no offense, one of my all-time favorite WIBW employees, because he really took care of us new guys when we came in who had no idea what we were doing, and he was the assignment editor at that point, but he could shoot, he can report, he could edit, he could do everything. So that's who Jerry took with him. And
so as they were packing up in October of 1990, of course, you have to take the planes to get there as well. And so the troops, the National Guard members, were kind of going in waves as they were headed on over to Saudi Arabia. And this was a story that Jerry Hawley thought would be very important for us to document, because that's what we do in the media. We document history. So he explained.
No news group has had a chance to go to where the 190th is located, and that's why we're going, so that we can show the people in Kansas and in Topeka exactly what their servicemen and women are doing.
So that was what Jerry Hawley had to say before they took off. And as you can see, they went right up there in the tanker and off they went to the Middle East with some of our guardsmen from Kansas Air National Guard 190th Air Refueling Wing. We still, you said, Doug, that somehow they got reports back while they were there. It's not like today where, you know, you just have your phone, there's cell service everywhere, and you just, or in our case, we have a little backpack, basically is what it looks like. It operates off the cell towers. That kind of didn't really exist in 1990.
Well, and I guess I should be out of the shot here. We should have brought Bob T-Bolt in, because Bob could have told us exactly. I'm just fascinated with the equipment they would have had to take.
Yeah.
Because back then, you know, it wasn't these small compact cameras. You had a big deck, you had the camera, the battery belt that only powered the big light was like probably 30, it was 30 volt, weighed a ton. So just getting everything over there would have been a hassle. So I'd be interested in learning a little bit more. How
I have a feeling T will comment on this and he will let us all know. But so yes, they packed up. The Guard members packed up, and then as they were en route in the air, that was one of the things that Jerry Hawley kind of chronicled as he was there. This report from October of 1990 on the Kansas 190th Air Refueling Wing leaving for the Middle East.
The big KC-135 tanker from Forbes Field touched down in Saudi Arabia about midday on Wednesday. The trip from Topeka was long and tiring. The military jet does not have the comforts of a commercial airliner, web seating instead of plush airline seats. Oxygen masks don't drop from the ceiling. You carry your own around with you in case there's a drop in cabin pressure. The noise level is also high, requiring the need for earplugs. It should be remembered, however, that the plane was designed to carry fuel and not people. The aircraft was also loaded with spare parts and other items needed by 190th personnel at the deployed location. During the long flight, most of the crew read, took naps, or stopped by one of the 4 windows to see the sights. Some of the personnel were going over for the second time and took time to answer questions about Middle East customs for the first-timers on board. There may have been some apprehension, but the feeling was that they have been trained by the Kansas National Guard to do a job, and it was time to get to work. On our next report, we'll tell you what we can about where we are and give you a briefing on the weather. This is Jerry Hawley, WIBW News, Saudi Arabia.
I love how he ends that there where he says, we'll tell you what we can about where we are.
Yeah, we flew with the 190th to Guam many years ago. And, I mean, it was just, it's their turn to be there. They were doing some training with us. They were doing some actual jobs. It's
kind of if anything's a routine deployment, they kind of consider that a routine rotation they were in.
But this, I mean, we were in a conflict, in a war, it was getting ready to begin. So, yeah, the secrecy was just that they would allow us to go. Meant, you know, I think that meant a lot, that the trust they had with us to allow Jerry and Bob to actually go there, you know, when everything was being kept pretty quiet.
Absolutely. Embedded before, you know, really today's embedded is kind of a typical thing that you see, but there always have been journalists covering conflict, but for a local station to go and do that was an interesting opportunity that Jerry had, because he had built a relationship with the leadership in the Kansas National Guard to be able to trust us to go along with that, and so early on in the conflict as well to talk about what they did, what they do. And I think that's kind of the lesson that folks back home have when they watch reports like this is I mean, you kind of have a concept. We see them in Topeka fly overhead all the time, and you kind of know, okay, they fly those big aircraft. Somehow we need them to support things. You know, what you're going to see in one of the later pieces here is there's a lot of land there. When we had the opportunity to go with the 190th to Guam, there was a lot of water. So, you know, in both cases, depending on the terrain, not a lot of places to just land and pull up to a gas station and fuel your aircraft. Plus, they're flying missions. They're going into areas that maybe they don't want everybody to know they are, so they're not going to take time to go on the ground, refuel, and go. And that's what the 190th does. So what happened when they arrived in Saudi Arabia? What was it like around them? What were they encountering with some of the soldiers who were there, our airmen and women who were there? Well, we found out that in one of his next reports from October of 1990.
For many of the members of the 190th Air Refueling Group, this was their first to assist in the multinational force to defend Middle East countries from the Iraqi forces. For others of this elite group, it was their second time abroad to Saudi Arabia. The trip over is long enough to require a layover for refueling the KC-135, this time at Mildenhall Air Base outside of London. We arrived in darkness at 1 a.m. English time enough for the Kansas coyotes to stretch their legs and maybe have a smoke or two. From London, it was on to our destination in western Saudi Arabia. We arrived shortly before noon local time to a warm greeting by other 190th members, including the wing commander of the group, Colonel Charles M. Beyer, Jr. Colonel Beyer has been deployed in Saudi Arabia since mid-August, arrived during a very tense time. How was it when you arrived here the first day?
About 110 degrees, the wind was blowing, the sun was bright, and it was vacant. It was empty. The ramp was vacant. There was the base commander Colonel Mansour and a Navy captain were standing on the ramp to meet me. They showed me where the ground was and showed us where our offices were going to be, and thanked us very much for coming, and both departed.
The Colonel's executive officer in Saudi Arabia works closely with the wing commander for the forces in the western part of the country. And the Colonel has a rare distinction serving in the Persian Gulf crisis.
He's also, in essence, would be considered a military governor. He's in charge of the western half of Saudi Arabia. That's Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marine personnel here in Saudi.
Shortly after arrival, a letter from Kansas Governor Mike Hayden was presented to the commander, thanking him and the 190th for their support in Operation Desert Shield.
Thank you.
A letter from Colonel Byer to the governor is being drafted and will be delivered to Governor Hayden in the coming days. This is Jerry Holly, 13 News, Saudi Arabia.
Jerry even had his own flight suit when they went there. So,
Of course.
and the kazoos, being greeted by the kazoo band as they came off the plane was kind of classic, kind of fun. But you make your fun where you can when you're deployed
Well, exactly.
in the middle of a desert.
Exactly. And you mentioned the flight suit. Yeah, you'll see, I think, some video with Bob T. Bolt. Same thing, you know, they were part of the group, so they weren't going to be dressed in shorts and Hawaiian shirts. You know, they were there to do a mission just similar to like the 190th was.
Well, speaking of the attire, why don't we move to that right now?
Okay.
So there was a very special piece of equipment that they had to wear. It had to do with the clothing because they were, again, in this unusual, different war zone. And so that was one of the stories that Jerry shared.
An item that every military person must have in Saudi Arabia, including 190th personnel, units from the Big Red 1 from Fort Riley, the Quartermaster Corps from Great Bend, and servicemen and women from the 129th Transport Group, Emporia and Osage City, and even visiting television reporters, is a chemical warfare suit. Here in Saudi Arabia, we were briefed by First Lieutenant Timothy Makuda of the 325th Medical Group.
This is a charcoal line suit which filters out all known chemical, biological, and radiological agents. So it'll protect you against just about any kind of threat that will be out there. These are factory sealed and not opened until such a situation arises as you need to use it. And we're going to go ahead and open this one up. The suit itself consists of a jacket and a pair of pants. Normally the way you would do this is you'd have somebody else helping you do it because, as you can see, there are some straps and things that are kind of difficult to seal up by yourself. You want to do that is you want to open that boot up fully and center your foot inside of it. So your rubber gloves that go on top, and again the gloves will go inside the jacket, and the jacket will be covered up and cinched off at the wrist to create a nice barrier there. These are simple filter masks, and all they do is filter out particles.
We hope that Saddam Hussein would not be so cruel as to use chemical or biological warfare against our men and women. But if he should, they are ready. On this report, a tactical refueling mission in the skies over Saudi Arabia. Jerry Holly, WIBW News, Saudi Arabia.
We don't even have to tell you one of the other reports we're going to have because Jerry just did that for you. Does that make you feel better or worse when, I mean, that would be like when it became real, right? When they're putting that stuff on you and saying, I mean, just in case.
There were rumors, I mean, we didn't have social media back then, but the rumors on every news channel were, does he have chemical weapons? Will he use chemical weapons? So, yeah, you know, hey, this is going to be a cool story. At some point, they had to be thinking, this may be a dangerous story too, and that kind of reinforces it.
Yeah. And, you know, those fears, those concerns about various parts of the world are things that continue today. So you heard Jerry say there's a report from a refueling mission because you can't go with the 190th and not head up in the air and watch them become a gas station in the sky. But also a report that we want you to see is about one of you came and said, hey, there's this story on this person. She's become one of my favorite people over the years that I've been working here, and she would have been very early on in her career with the 190th at this point in time. So don't go anywhere because we have a very special story to share about one of the groundbreaking women in the Kansas National Guard, along with that refueling trip up over the desert when your trip into the video vault presented by Ace Plumbing, Heating and Air and Appliance returns in 1 minute. Welcome back into the WIBW Video Vault, proudly presented by Ace Plumbing, Heating and Air and Appliance. This week in the Video Vault, we are heading back 35 years to 1990/91. It was 35 years ago at this time that the 190th was in the midst of a deployment to the Middle East, specifically Saudi Arabia, where Operation Desert Shield, which then became Operation Desert Storm, was really in full swing. And at this point in time, just starting to heat up. The 190th was one of the first National Guard units in the nation that was deployed to Saudi Arabia because they needed support for that refueling mission. So our 190th men and women actually were there starting in August of 1990.
Yeah, and in the Video Vault, in the digitizing it, I'm in 1991 right now, so I'm getting a real history lesson on this stuff. And there was a group from Osage City in the Emporia area. Through our help from CBS, we were able to catch up with them on a few stories. And of course, the Big Red One, they were in there. A lot of CBS followed them in the networks extensively because they're the Big Red One, and the Big Red One does their thing, and you know they draw a lot of attention. But yeah, the 190th was right in there from early on, you know, supporting everybody else and doing their mission.
And then in about fall, October of 1990, our then WIBW general manager, the late Jerry Hawley, and then a photojournalist. What actually was his position?
He would have been.
Sorry, Bob. What
assignment editor.
Assignment editor at that time.
He'd done everything.
But he did everything around the newsroom, so it's just kind of like it was T.
He ran the newsroom.
Went along with him, chronicling the work that our men and women of the 190th were doing over in Saudi Arabia. And one person that they ran into is someone who would go on to become one of the groundbreaking members of our Kansas National Guard. She was just starting out in her tenure at that point in time in 1990. She had I was reading her bio, and she had married a person who was stationed at the Forbes Air Base, and then that kind of answered a call within herself. She went back to school, got a nursing education, joined the Kansas National Guard, and when Jerry and Bob were in Saudi Arabia, they did a little story on the medical effort that was taking place there, and they ran into a young woman from Overbrook, Kansas, named Deborah Rose, who walked them through what her assignment was.
Nearly everyone has seen the television program MASH, but here at the 190th location in Saudi Arabia, things have been updated. The unit is the 325th Medical Group out of Tyndall Air Force Base, Florida. Personnel for the unit come from all over, including the Kansas Coyotes. One specialist from Overbrook is Captain Deborah Rose, a nurse with the 190th, who told us that the new MASH is a lot different.
We have an emergency room, which is equipped with a trauma center. We have 4 wards that contain 25 beds each, so we have a capacity of 100-bed hospital. We have an enclosed operating room. We've been doing some very major cases, most of them orthopedic at this point, and we have a laboratory, x-ray, pharmacy, patient administration. We have everything that a regular, we also have a dental service.
This is my second day here.
The 325th takes care of all service personnel in Western Saudi Arabia, and the biggest medical problem you might think is heat-related. Not so.
The one thing which is real interesting is we've seen a lot of kidney stones, and we feel like that's due to the increased calcium in the bottled water we have, and people just aren't drinking enough water. It was something unusual that we weren't anticipating.
When asked about morale, Captain Rose told us that regular Air Force people have not been told how long their stay will be in country. As a National Guard captain, however, she knows when she will be going home. Jerry Hawley, WIBW News, Saudi Arabia.
Captain Rose went on to become Brigadier General Deborah Rose. She was the first woman to attain the rank of Brigadier General in the Kansas National Guard. She's just a very nice person to be around. After her retirement, she remained involved in the community, did things with the YWCA, did things with the American Heart Association.
Helped us out.
She did. She retired in 2011, serving more than 28 years with the Kansas National Guard. So she would have only been like 6-7 years into her service with the National Guard at the time that she was a captain serving over in Saudi Arabia. But again, went on to become Brigadier General. Deborah
Pretty
Rose.
impressive.
Absolutely. So, okay, it's the 190th, right? You got to go up in the air.
That's true.
We've had the pleasure of being able to do that.
Yes. It's
What did you see
experience.
below you?
Well,
besides the plane.
We saw a lot of clouds and then the blue ocean.
And then the blue ocean.
Pacific is what we saw. But
So yes, our trip was to Guam, which is an island which has ocean all around it. Saudi Arabia is the Middle East. There's a lot of desert, a lot of just dirt-looking scenes.
Did you notice they had like almost like pallets in the sand?
Yeah.
In that last story, and I saw one of the stories that I didn't include. They talked just about the heat and stuff walking across the sand. So I guess that was one of the ways to get around that. It's like the old Western towns. They had their little boardwalks.
Yeah.
So that, I mean, they had a lot to deal with, more than just, more than you would realize when it came to a war. There was the elements also.
Exactly. So by the time Jerry got around to filing this story about the flight, and everyone's like, waiting, when are we going to see you fly? It was November 2nd, just FYI, November 2nd in 1990.
He was building up.
He was, exactly. Well, that's what you do, right? You keep people in suspense, and you get to the big payoff, which is being able to see those folks in the air. Because not everybody gets to see that view from way up high. And so here you go, from November 2nd, 1990, Jerry Hawley flying with the 190th Air Refueling Wing in Saudi Arabia.
One of the reasons our WIBW News team came to Saudi Arabia was to see the men and women of the 190th do what they are trained to do. The many hours come down to completing the mission. We were allowed to accompany a 190th crew and a Utah National Guard tanker on a tactical mission. The big plane lifted off the runway at the deployed location and set a northerly course over the burning sands. The mission was to refuel Air Force F-15 Eagle fighters who were on patrol near the Iraqi border. We must admit that our WIBW crew was a bit apprehensive to be on this flight, but when the first F-15 came up under the boom, it was a beautiful sight. Unlike the training missions we have been on, this was a tactical mission, with radio silence before, during, and after the refueling. When the last F-15 was full, the KC-135 headed for home. Our crew, Colonel Mick Byer as aircraft commander from Topeka, Major Kevin Sweeney of Kansas City was the co-pilot, Captain Jeff Murmas of Olathe was the navigator, and the boomer was Senior Master Sergeant Mike Pearson of Topeka. They had done their job as they had been trained to do. On our next report, a change of pace. We'll talk to a Saudi Arabian newspaper publisher on his thoughts about the possibility of war. This is Jerry Hawley, WIBW News, Saudi Arabia.
And as we know, that conflict would escalate by the time January rolled around. And as they say, the rest is history. The 190th continued to support there, and folks continued to deploy there. And but that was interesting to see them up in the air. And when I first saw the video, that when you said, hey, come look at it, it was a little interesting. Like, why is there Utah Air National Guard on the boom? Well, they bring them all there, they bring them all together, and they...
it's a joint mission. Right?
Exactly. They kind of combine them with another wing, and they get attached, as they say, or assigned. And so whoever ultimately ends up being what they are, they're not the 190th when they're there, they became the... What did it say here? The 117th or the 1709th Air Refueling Wing Provisional. So yeah, they all kind of join together and have different numbers. Those guys probably would all know. They would know the ins and outs of everything that happened.
Exactly. You did notice, we're not going to show it today, but there was a tease at the end about talking to a newspaper publisher, which my first thought was, well, that's an interesting story. But at the time, we were owned by Stauffer Communications, and Stauffer, they were obviously into radio and television with WIBW and a couple of stations on the West Coast and up in Wyoming, but newspapers were their thing. So they probably, maybe requested that story just to, see what it was like in the newspaper business in Saudi Arabia.
It is interesting, too, though, to see how the media operates in a place that's in another part of the world where maybe they don't have the freedoms that we do, or the protections that we do. I mean, we can't go anywhere, everywhere. We have rules we have to abide by as well. However, no one's coming in the office saying you will not print this or not print this. We have freedom of the press under the First Amendment, free speech.
Very lucky.
We are very lucky, and all because of missions like that our folks in our military service do, whether it be the 190th Air Refueling Wing, our Black Hawk unit that is over at the Army Guard portion of Forbes Field in Topeka, our Fort Riley soldiers, the Big Red One, anyone who is serving in any of those National Guard units that we have throughout Northeast Kansas. We know you are all very proud of your service, and we thank you for your service as well.
And I'm going to take this as a chance to, this is the invite for Bob T-Bolt, to come over because I found some more video at about the same time. It was here in Topeka, but...
Are you saying it's video he'd like to keep
I
silent in the vault?
I think he would like it. I do. So he needs to come on the show with us. With you, I'll just eat my lunch, and you guys, he could walk you through a really cool.
He's going to be commenting. I know.
Really cool video that I found.
As we keep going through this trek through time with you through our video vault, if there are things that you remember, maybe important stories, important events, or maybe it's just a strange feature story that you remember we did way back when, drop a note in all the comments, of course, or send us an email to news@wibw.com. We'd love to hear from you. Comment on this one as well if you saw any of your family, friends, relatives, because that's always kind of fun too. You never know who's going to write in and go, that was me. Love when you do that. So until next time, thank you so much for joining this trip with us back on Kansas Day, seeing how Kansans have been important to our missions and our peace and security around the world from the Video Vault, proudly presented by Ace Plumbing, Heating, Air, and Appliance.